Sidi?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Now
Then
okay,
can?
sir.
Then
Oh,
okay.
sir.
Okay. Now we can start, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. As I
Good evening,
told,
sir.
good evening. As I told you earlier, then there's another area of procurement, that is procurement risk management. We just discussed some points relating to risk, but not in a methodological way. Today, we are going to discuss how we can identify procurement risk and how to assess risk and how to control or mitigate risk and also various procurement process, how we can treat risk in procurement process. Okay, so as you all know, procurement expenditure representing approximately 10 to 15% of GDP, and it is common to Sri Lanka also, and 20 to 70% of national budget across countries all over the world. Public procurement is an important pillar of public service delivery. That is, we discussed earlier also. However, successful public procurement is threatened by risk in areas as diverse as compliance, sustainability, and operations. So, even though our guidelines and everything is there, we don't know. There's a high risk of non-compliance to regulations. And sustainability aspect is a new dimension in procurement, you all know. And as we said in our guideline also, there's another guideline will come up on sustainable procurement. It has many aspects, as you know, economic aspect, institutional aspect, environmental aspect, and social aspect. So those are important areas, right? So if we are not properly adhering to this aspect, there's a risk. For example, if we procure things harming the environment, right? Harming the environment, that is a threat or risk. So that's why we little while ago discussed how we can consider some environmental things into the procurement, right? For example, how to reduce the carbon emission to the environment. And operational aspect is very important. Once we are doing, there are a lot of risk involved. For example, if you award the contract to a contractor, there's a risk until it is completed. Performance risk and violation of the contract conditions, and ultimately, and what you call it, natural disasters, natural risks, a lot of things are there, right? We try to understand. Procurement entities can address these challenges by, number one, identify the risk, right? Then assess the risk component we have to try to assess and treat the risk or control the risk, and and monitoring also throughout the procurement process. To do so, they use general tools such as risk register. Risk register is a tool, risk management tool, and risk metrics is another tool, as well as more targeted measures aimed at specific challenges such as supply chain risk, right? Supply chain risk. Yeah. Okay. We'll just think one point related to supply chain risk. Anybody can think of that. But what does it mean, supply chain risk? Anything come to your mind when I say supply chain risk in procurement? Anybody? Please.
Yes, that things that can be interrupt the supply chain.
Yeah. Any example can you say?
Yeah, that geopolitical issues like war, civil war,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
then
that is, yeah. Yeah.
exchange rate issues,
Okay,
trade
yeah.
policies issues that the current days that America and China has an issue regarding tax
Yes, yes.
issues like that.
Yes, there are a lot of things, right? Even though we advertise bids and still bidders are not responding, that is also a risk to get the proper contractors. That's why we should have a proper supply chain, like our there are mitigating methods, for example, to identify the potential suppliers in advance and have a relationship with them. So that's some example. Uh, ultimately, if you don't have proper supply chain relationship, even though we advertise, bidders will not respond because their production line and our requirements are not aligned, right? The procurement of complex goods, services, and infrastructure, not only goods, services, and works actually, infrastructure coming under works, involve different and often more consequential risk linked to market structures. Market structures, size, and length of contract, and the interconnected nature of decision making linked with many things actually, size, right? In addition, in addressing this broad array of risks, the development of a national risk management strategy is a crucial step to ensure coordinated and consistent approach. The OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, this is one of the agencies involved in procurement research and a lot of publications. Efficient and effective procurement is crucial to fulfill the basic functions of public administration and to ensure sustainable and inclusive economy. So that all we know, we agree. So procurement is a very, at the beginning also we discussed, very important function of public administration as well as public financial management. Taking threats to efficiency and effectiveness seriously require a systemic consideration of risk and implementation of well-developed risk management strategies. So they say efficiency and effectiveness. Now you have some idea. It comes from the value for money point. We say public entities should deliver outputs and outcomes. Then efficiency and effectiveness is interrelated to the process, right? Delivery process. If systematic consideration risk. So when we consider efficiency and effectiveness of delivering public sector services, we have to consider risk factor, well-developed risk. For that, we need a strategy, risk management strategies. I mean, you have to come to that subject slowly. In order to address risk, we have to identify strategies, how to overcome. The recommendation on the governance of infrastructure further state that a comprehensive plan. So we'll have to have a comprehensive plan, risk management plan to manage, monitor, and mitigate risk. All things we are telling same thing. During the asset life cycle is an important component of ensuring value for money in infrastructure delivery. All our OECD things. A 2018 survey on the implementation of recommendation of public procurement found that only 52% of respondent countries had developed, only 52%, that means half of the countries in the world has developed a strategy for assessment, prevention and mitigation of public procurement risk at the national level. So I think we are far behind that. Sri Lanka, I don't know much attention given to this area. Many procurement risks serves to ensure value for money. Managing risk serve to ensure value for money. That is also important. Continuity and integrity. And service continuity, that is also important. And integrity, everything is. Beyond this, recent events have highlighted the strategic role of risk management in public procurement for supporting the resilience of government, economies, and society as a whole. So that is a macro level impact. Why risk management matter for public procurement? Right? That is a straight question we are asking. Those are about things generally the preamble. Public procurement is a key pillar of delivering public services. Okay? Public procurement is a key pillar delivering public services and strategic government objectives. So I think you have clearly understood right now with my all presentations. Procurement is not purchasing or contracting works and goods. It should link with organizational objectives and mission and organization-wise, and also in the government vision and mission. So this is basically the resource allocation. Procurement is just basically a resource allocation. We have very limited resources, and as I said repeatedly, procurement contributes more than 60% of the national budget. In addition, the other procurement money also spent their own revenue, etc. PPP also. So that is a huge component of the government expenditure point of view. So procurement we don't consider as the output. Procurement is not the output. I always say it is an input. Why? We cannot happy with the building or infrastructure or machine or whatever. That should be an input to deliver public services or deliver their strategic objectives for respective organization. Therefore, very important thing is delivering outputs and outcomes. Then only the matter comes the efficiency and effectiveness. Because without outputs and outcomes, we cannot determine or calculate the efficiency of the public service or effectiveness of public service. Even though people still talk about the efficiency of public service, I don't think we are far behind to talk. We cannot give any what do you call conclusion about the efficiency or inefficiency of public organization in isolation without considering their envisaged or expected outputs and outcomes. So therefore, procurement is the guiding body or guiding factor to ensure they are delivering adequate and efficient and effective results. So therefore, you must consider and very, very seriously rooted in your system and mindset. Procurement should not be considered as outputs. Procurement should always consider inputs. So how we should do inputs to ensure VFM, value for money, and things like that, we have to consider the all the problems, including the risk associated with the procurement, right? Risk impacting public procurement process have concrete and significant consequence. Risk has impacting public procurement concrete and significant consequences on the quality, quantity, timeless, and of public services. So I don't know whether you clearly understand my explanation. since we are talking about the risk factor in procurement, we must understand it has a very significant consequences of the quality, quantity, timely, etc. of public service delivery. So you try to understand. If you are not understood, please tell me. This section defines the scope of the risk management approach, and this area I say is very critical because right. So you try to link public service and risk through procurement. This section defines the scope of the risk management approach and discusses the different categories of risk. There is another thing, categories of risk. We have to identify different categories that impact procurement outcomes. You can see this presentation, right?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Applying risk management throughout the procurement cycle and for different levels of complexity. Risk management activities can be undertaken at different levels. It can address risks which threaten a system as a whole or particular subsystem. This slide addresses risks preliminary at level of individual procurement procedures or at specific stages of the procurement process, right? This addresses the delivery of full range of public procured goods. This addresses the delivery of full range of public procured goods, services, and infrastructure. Because through this process, what we do, we deliver public procurements, right? Given the heterogeneous nature of these goods, services, and infrastructure, the procurement risks and appropriate strategies for managing those risks very significant. Procurement risks, what are the procurement risks? And what are the appropriate strategies? The heterogeneity is addressed by dividing goods, service, and infrastructure into two broad categories. One is common, non-complex, off-the-shelf goods and services for which competitive market exists. Vehicles, furniture, etc. You know that it is readily available. But complex goods, services, and works infrastructure which require customization, not already available in the market. Example, fighter jet with customized requirement, the procurement innovation, as well as almost all infrastructure. Whatever, what you have to do is, according to this explanation, they have categorized into two categories. Straightforward procurement, which is already manufactured and ready to buy, something like that. Works so, good so, whatever. But some other things they calculate as complex. We identify that also in a different complex thing, complex procurement. Okay, what they say is applying risk management throughout the procurement cycle and for different levels of complexity. In practice, many procurement categories exist in between these two categories. Not straight away the simple one, straight away this one, common one, or complex scalar. We cannot say it is in between. Example, both off-the-shelf and complex, such as sophisticated medical equipment, and are subject to different level of complexity and associated risk. For example, in some cases, the use of public as a strategic policy lever to achieve policy goals related to environmental, economic, and social challenges can be higher risk. That means public procurement to achieve the goals, policy goals related to environment, economic, and social challenge. So you can think of when you do procurement, it may be challenge to environment sometimes. It may be challenge to economic aspect or social aspect. How we can, mitigate the potential risk involved, right? We'll see some example. When it introduces additional complexity to procurement process, a major challenge to applying a risk management framework is clearly define the scope in terms of project stages. So they identify the risk according to the stages of the project. In other words, where could be procurement functions role start and stop, and the responsibility of the other functions stop and start. The answer depends on the level of complexity of the project based on two categories defined above. I will see. The public procurement cycle commonly refers to the sequence of related activities from need assessment, market analysis, and engagement in optional appraisal throughout competition and award and payment, etc., etc. So, as you know, need assessment and market analysis is coming first. All right. We are talking some aspect of the procurement process. This sequence is most relevant in the procurement of common, non-complex products and can be almost entirely led by the procurement function. As complexity increases, however, two adjustments become necessary. Complexity increases. First, need assessment and an optional appraisal become distinct inputs into the procurement cycle carried out by specialist function. In complex procurement such as large infrastructure projects, national master plan, strategic planning represent the needs assessment further supplemented with investment appraisal to identify the best solution. So what we are trying to do is need assessment and optional appraisal become distinct input into the procurement cycle carried by specialized function in complex procurement. Such as large infrastructure. Second, greater complexity requires the consideration of dimension, which generally are implicit, that is inherent in the procurement of common non-complex goods. Greater complexity requires the consideration of dimension. Consideration dimension of which generally are implicit. Dimension which are generally implicit. That means that become itself. Once the need definition is complete, the make or buy decision determines which capabilities the procuring entity develop in-house and which it needs to procure. So I think if you can recall your need assessment, I said the need assessment is not to procure things to reduce the demand of procurement. So we have to take various decisions rather than purchasing. We have to make or buy or sometimes repair or various things. Next, decision on the packaging. Then we identify different packages into contract flow. Lastly, decisions on the nature of the contract for each package need to be determined. Package and nature of the package contract need to be determined, which also drives the choice of bidder evaluation and selection process. I mean, that is basically what we do. We identify the need, we identify the different packages and various things. Then we have to select choice or select the bidder, right? That is what we do. The contract need to be determined both the incentives and the nature of collaboration between the buyer and the supplier, right? That is collaboration. This is all literature, don't worry too much, but I must read because all of a sudden we can't go into the procurement risk management without properly identifying its background information. Thus, when procuring complex products, the need assessment and option appraisal are no longer the responsibility of the procurement function. Right, we'll see. Failure in these stages, however, still represent the risk for the stages of the procurement process, which remain the responsibility of the procurement function. Failure in these stages, however, still represent a risk. Failure in these stages, however, still represent a risk for the stages of procurement process. We'll see how. For example, inadequate need assessment for a metro project result in an outcome that does not serve groups with impaired mobility. For example, wheelchair users, parents with strollers, things like that. That is a risk. So they have not properly identified some special needy people. While this is a failure of the project, it is not in itself a procurement failure, as the needs assessment in this case is a separate specialized function. That's what they say. Some risks are inherent. That is called implicit. Some are external that has to be identified properly when you plan the procurement, those facilities or something features. However, stakeholder groups can exert pressure to address their needs in the functional specification while the project is already under consideration. Pressure group. However, stakeholders, that is needy people, functional spec. Similarly, boring a tunnel through an urban environmental with incomplete utility maps can frequently result in a need to find alternative solution when the project is already under construction. So, boring tunnel through an urban environment with incomplete utility maps. So, incomplete utility maps. So they don't know where the water lines are there, the storage line is there, and that will jeopardize so non-functioning because of this construction, right? Can frequently result in need to find alternative solution. They have to find some other way if it is disturbed. Say no electricity or no water, for example. These risks are not specifically related to procurement. However, knowing whether the scope of the project will be subject to frequent changes will affect the choice of the appropriate procurement strategy. Okay. Applying risk and risk management concept to procurement. So this risk management paper uses ISO 31000, define the risk and uncertain future condition or circumstance that could impact the achievement of objectives, and one that is often characterized by reference to potential events or consequences. Same thing we discussed earlier also. Objective can have different aspects such as financial, health, safety, gender inequality, or environmental, and various areas, and can apply at different levels such as the strategic or project level, international organization. Okay, that is the organization they say. Risk can therefore be conceptualized in terms of the component causes, events, and consequences. component, causes, and events. Risk component, causes and events and consequences. That is another organization. Risk factor are characterized in an organization environment, policies, procedures, or activities that are associated with risk. Risk factor are characterized of an organization environment, policies, procedures, or activities that are associated with this. So anything where we can identify the factor, maybe policy, procedures, or activities, environment, whatever, there may be risk factor. Cause is a fact of occurrence. So we know cause is the factor of occurrence, which alone or in combination has the potential to create. So cause alone or as combination of causes can have a potential risk factor and cause and consequences. An event of an occurrence, that is event, right, is an occurrence or change the circumstances. An event is an occurrence or change and in circumstances. Events are usually thought of as something unexpected, but can also be something expected which does not happen. Those are called event. Consequences are the outcomes of an event. Consequences are the outcome of an event affecting objectives and can be certain or uncertain. So that is something this institution has identified conceptualization of risk. Identify the risk factor, identify the cause and consequences, events, and things like that. So this is how they conceptualize the risk. That is OECD. Risk factor. And identify the cause. And as a cause, you have to identify the risk and event and the impact and likelihood of risk and the consequences. Risk factor, cause, events, and consequences, right? In the context of this paper, a risk is an uncertain future condition. Yeah, risk is an uncertain future condition. We don't know whether it will happen or not happen. Or circumstance related to public procurement. The possibility that an event, threat, missed opportunity, action or inaction will materialize and may impact the procurement objective of the public entity, right? Risk management, therefore, is the identification, assessment, control and mitigation and ongoing monitoring of, and also that, an ongoing monitoring of that, of these uncertain future conditions or circumstances, their causes and their consequences. I mean, this give a good understanding for you. Risk management, therefore, is the identification, assessment, control or mitigation, and monitoring of these uncertain future conditions and circumstances. Their causes, conditions, causes, and consequences. Now you get some idea, I think, by following this. The step of risk management side. Now, that is important. Now we straight away come to the subject. What are the steps of this risk management cycle? They are generally applicable to all phases, of the public procurement process. From strategic planning, need assessment through contract management. planning through contract management. That means entire procurement process should cover from risk management. Again, I'm telling, so when you go to risk management cycle, we can get more detailed understanding. The point is we have to identify the risk at different stages of the procurement. Once you identify, you have to assess the risk, the likelihood of possibility or probability of occurring or not occurring. Then once you identify that, we have to identify how to control or reduce the risk. And also we have to monitor that. Okay. Again, identification, what are the risks? Assessment, what is the likelihood of risk occurring? How severe the impact of the risk be? Once you assess, we have to identify the severity, whether it's a small thing or big thing. Risk evaluation and treatment, what can be done to reduce likelihood of that impact to risk, right? That is treatment, control and mitigation, basically. Once we identify, we have to identify how to control that, how to reduce, mitigate that. Finally, we have to monitor that. As the situation change, there are new risks emerging. So they have to continuously monitor. So now we go into exact steps of these 4 stages. These 4 stages important, very important. This one is very important, no doubt. From this point, all things, earlier we mentioned some literature point, but this is the practical steps we are now talking. Conceptualizing risk. Critical to the connection of risk management is the difference between inherent and net residual risk. Inherent risk and net and residual risk. Keep in mind, keep identify what are the inherent risks. That means we can't avoid that, something like that. Inherent risk is a level of untreated risk or risk before the application of any risk management activities or control measures to reduce its likelihood or severity, right? Inherent. The risk actually, that is inherent. Net risk is the level of risk following the application of any existing control measures or actions. You see, residual risk is the level of remaining risk following the application of new control measures or actions that may be under consideration. Inherent risk, net risk, and residual risk. That is the balance risk, for example. After the action, it is still there. Net risk is the level of risk following the application of any existing control measures or actions, right? Distinguishing between inherent and net and residual risk allows for an appropriate assessment of risk or on an ongoing basis, as well as an evaluation of the appropriateness and value of control measures, things like that. So we'll see. Mitigating inherent risk to residual risk. This inherent risk, so existing control measures we apply, then the net risk is there. Control measures under the consideration, then the remaining is residual risk, right? Inherent to net risk, finally residual risk. Mitigating of inherent risk to residual risk. Risk management also has cost. particularly around control measures. Yes, the cost, both direct and indirect, of implementing risk controls must be carefully assessed to ensure they are proportional to and commensurate with the reduction in the likelihood and severity of the risk being mitigated. So whatever the measures we should take to control things, the results should be proportional or commensurate with the reduction. If you spend a lot of money and risk reduction is very little, I mean, that is not good. It is often impossible to it is impossible completely eliminate risk. And there will be generally be an acceptable level of risk. Some risk we have to accept, beyond which the cost of risk control outweigh the potential harms. So that is that we have to accept. There is no way. The level of risk an organization is willing to accept. The level of risk, the risk organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its objective is known as risk appetite. Okay, that is called risk appetite. We are willing to accept that, or risk tolerance. Okay, so we accept some level of risk. For example, I mean, we can go to example later for just to understand that. So when we call bids and any price fluctuations will be channeled through variations, for example. So variation provision is there. So then bidder has less risk in order to lose his money, because when there is a price fluctuation, there will be a compensation. So then the organization will undertake that risk. If the price goes up, exchange rate goes up, we undertake that. That is risk appetite or risk tolerance. Risk appetite varies from organization to organization and depend on a variety of factors, including its mission, the requirement of its stakeholders, its experience in the field in question, and organizational maturity. So we understand organizational maturity, right? So we know with our experience that will happen. So we accept that, right? We are willing to accept that risk component. If we put to bidder, what will happen? He put a very high premium for that, right? If we say no price fluctuation, irrespective of the exchange rate or price, I mean, then what will happen? Bidder will put additional precautions and put very high prices. Okay, risk appetite. Okay, it should be grounded in a framework that guarantees the sustainability of the organization and its ability to meet its obligation. Okay. Public procurement is subject to different categories of risk. The volume of purchases, the complexity of the process, and the number of stakeholders make public procurement a high-risk activity. So volume, complexity, and the number of stakeholders make public procurement high-risk activity. Infrastructure procurement is particularly complex, making successful risk management critical to effective delivery. When choosing how to deliver infrastructure, government must balance political, sectoral, economic, and strategic aspect, stakeholders' cost and benefit, and to ensure project deliver value for money. Okay, that is a very common thing. No? When government is going to start a coal project in Timco, the high public protection was there, and clergy is so against that. And there are some reason behind that. There are cultivation and environment polluted and things like that. So, but how government should control that, balance political, sectoral, economic, and strategic aspect, stakeholder cost, the 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 the, the, the citizens of that area, and they have to incur some additional cost for because of this, maybe negative externality, and sometimes benefits also. For example, if there's a water tank or something, that will harm some people, but get benefit also. Some farmers get water or something, right? This overlapping and sometimes competing consideration heighten the need of implement strategies to identify SSN. So that is we need to consider this complex situation, overlapping things in order to when we are doing risk management. In all OECD countries, public procurement laws and regulation are at least partially applicable to the procurement of public infrastructure, with 60% of the member countries applying public procurement framework to all infrastructure. Public procurement is subject to different categories of risk. Earlier also we discussed. Public procurement can be impacted by a wide range of risks that can affect the procurement process itself, as well as broader risks to project or service delivery. Risks do not occur only during the tendering. Risk is not tendering process. Normally, tendering process means in our language, pre-contract stage, from the bid notice to award. But over the life of the contract or life of the procurement asset, right? Initially, focusing on integrity threats. In recent years, countries have paid increasing attention to other risks to public procurement outcomes, including information technology, financial, reputational, social, and environmental risks. So that is integrity problem. The evaluation officers and other people are not honest, and they take biased decision. They bribe and things like that. It is often seen in the tendering process or pre-contract stage. Many of these risks impact the fundamental purpose of procurement, ensuring that goods, services, or works are delivered to the right place at the right time. Many of risks impact the fundamental purpose. Risks impact the fundamental purpose of procurement. What is the fundamental purpose? When the risk is there, that will affect the right place, right time, and things like that. It is key to identify the root cause, different risks without confusing them with the consequence of these risks. Figure below provides example of public risk categories. While not comprehensive, these categories provide an indication of the breadth of the risk management challenges in public procurement process. risk management challenges. Here, examples of categorization of risk impacting public outcomes. So, one is regulatory compliance. What are the risks? Compliance with public procurement regulatory framework is needed, right? So that means our regulation, guidelines. So that violation of guideline. Compliance with relevant regulatory framework, integrity risk, fraud, corruption, collusion, etc. So they violate the rules and do corruption, malpractices, collusion. That is called regulatory compliance. Risks that impact to the procurement outcomes, right? Sustainability risk, environmental risk. So once we do infrastructure that harm the environment, when we procure some goods, some machinery that harm the environment. Social risk, example, human rights violation or labor rights abuse, right? The procurement. Resilience risk, example, inadequate specifications. So we prepare inadequate specification that affect to sustainability aspect. The sustainability aspect, I said, has different aspect, economic aspect, social aspect, environment aspect, things like that, right? This social exam, this environment, this is economic, um, yes. Then the operational aspect risk, digital risk. So when we do IT-based procurements, and there are a lot of risk has maybe come up. Capacity risk, right? Our officers don't have the proper knowledge and skills. Procurement staff with necessary skill. Suppliers point of view, that is also a risk. Disrupted supply chain, right? Economic and contractual risk, budgetary risk. So the government can't provide sufficient funds to the project. That is, then we have to stop the project sometimes. Market risk, low number of bidders, right? That is lack of competition, right? So that is coming under economic and contractual risk. So there are 4 categories of risk that impact to procurement outcomes: regulatory, sustainability, operational, and economic and contractual. Procurement is a widely used strategic tool which can contribute to achievement of complementary policy objectives such as the protection of the environment, enhancement of innovation, and the development of small and medium enterprises, etc., etc. So, however, as introducing additional policy considerations result in higher complexity and reduce clarity of intended objective, using public as a strategic policy tool has the potential to increase risk. What is that? However, as introducing additional policy consideration, we introduce additional policy consideration. For example, this environment or innovation or something like that. Higher complex that become higher complexity and reduce the clarity of the intended objectives, because we have not properly identified the strategies and things like that. We are using public as a strategic policy tool has a potential to increase risk. If we have that, if you properly worded, that's okay. When using public money as a strategic tool to achieve policy objective, in addition, risk related to negative impact on the planet and society, it is key to also highlight other adverse risks. That is common thing. They include impact on the market and the capacity and the capability of procurement workforce. Impact the market, that impact the market and capacity of the capability of the procurement workforce, right? That is also factor. Then how to apply that third one. This section provides a summary of the main step of risk management process and the associated actions the public buyers can take. While risk management can be divided into many steps, this simplifies by dividing the process into 4 key stages. They have identified 4 key stages. The section highlights the risk management tool and techniques that may be useful at each step in the process. This is also very important. Risk management tool and techniques. Risk management involves implementing process, policies, practices, and action that can change the likelihood of risk. Right? Risk management involves the likelihood of risk by addressing their cause. They're addressing the cause. We identify the risk. We identify the likelihood of or probability of risk, and then we identify the risk, reduce the severity of the possible consequence, and we can reduce the severity, gravity or something, and possible consequences also. Risk management, right? One, likelihood and reduce the severity. This can include, for example, segregation of duties across the procurement process, the implementation of training and awareness program, the development of procedures, manuals, internal and external audit, and establishing red flag systems. So that is an example how we can reduce the severity and consequences of risk, right? Okay. The severity and likelihood of risk and the important risk control associated risk control activities will differ depending on the procurement organization and the complexity and value of the goods, services, and that differ. Risk management activities should be dynamic and adequate to the evolving nature of project. Yes. For small value routine procurements, risk may be minimal. Routine procurement, risk may be minimal. But risk management for more complex and high value procurement can warrant considerable investment, time, and effort. This principle is also generally reflected in legal, regulatory, and operational procurement framework, where financial thresholds typically set more stringent procurement in areas such as publication and use of adequate procedures. The preparation of risk management plans should begin as part of overall procurement planning. This is also very important. I said risk should be considered at the planning stage, procurement planning stage. But risk management activities should be revisited and updated throughout the stages. Updated throughout the stages of the procurement process. It is not limited to planning, right? The risk management cycle is a continuous process with analysis and decisions reviewed and revisited on a regular basis. This is particularly true for complex procurement with longer time frame, where there should be a continuous risk identification. complex with long time framework, a 3-year, 4-year project, where there should be a continuous risk. Continuously, we have to identify the risk and assess risk in place of project. Okay. What is the preliminary step and prerequisite for successful implementation? Implement a risk management approach within an organization requires taking a number of steps summarized in the following box. We'll see that. First, it requires defining an overall vision and strategic objectives and clearly identify the challenges and benefits of risk management approach, right? So we have to identify the challenges and benefits, identify, okay. This can include aligning the risk management approach with broader strategic public procurement. Yeah, that is aligning risk management approach with broader strategic procurement goals, such as improving efficiency and effectiveness, combating corruption and fraud, and strategic policy goals such as environmental responsibility, gender equality, promoting innovation, etc. So once you identify the risk, you align risks with the procurement objectives. It can also include determine the procurement systemic risk appetite we discuss, the risk we accept, and especially the roles of different stakeholders and ensuring effective coordination. It requires understanding the environment in which the public buyer operates and the organization of the broader public procurement system. The engagement, leadership, and support of senior management is fundamental to successful implementation of risk management process and for mobilization of actors across the public procurement system. This engagement can reinforce the importance of risk management both explicitly through actions such as creation of risk management organization structure and or designation of a senior decision-making makers with responsibility for risk. We have to identify decision makers, structure, organization structure or designation, the officers or of senior management with responsibility of risk, and they have to give their responsibility, senior managers, and implicitly, for example, by making risk a standing item in senior manager meeting and emphasizing its importance in learning and training programs. So always emphasize in their management meetings and in our training program. By showing commitment to their role in risk oversight, senior management can help foster an effective risk management culture. Risk management culture, effective risk management culture. These preliminary steps also include establishing uniform and organized specific risk criteria. 4 criteria are recommended. That is also important. This one, these 4 criteria important. Are recommended. The likelihood of occurrence. What is the probability of occurrence? Of the probability of occurrence of a risk designated by L. That is, L is given for that, not that L. The severity of risk designated as S. Probability into severity. The risk criticality designated by C. What is this? The risk criticality. This one, severity, criticality, and the efficiency of control measures. And the efficiency of control. Note that is recommended to establish scales with an even number of options that can help to avoid the tendency for risk evaluators to select the middle value as a default. Risk likelihood, or L, can assess based on different parameters, including the public entity's mission and availability of historical data. It can assess by assessing probability, say 75% probability of occurring per year, or a frequency more than 20 times. Either probability or frequency. After defining the rating scale 1 to 4 and assessing each rating, a definition of specific risk can be given individual rating. So we can give rating, risk rating. We can rate the risk. For instance, rating 4 could be defined to mean the risk is very likely, rating 4. Could be defined to mean that risk is very likely or that has a probability greater than 80%. High probability, high severity, high rating is given. These parameters will depend on the context of each public buyer or each procurement. It is necessary to understand the environment in which the procurement is being carried out and in which the public buyer and its stakeholder operate. This all are theory. I have no way than discussing. The severity of risk provides an essential of its consequences, which could include, among others, impact on cost, time, quality, and reputation. The severity is specific to each entity as the same risk can, because this is a calculation, you will understand what is the, how we can use this. The severity for each entity as the same risk can result in consequences of varying severity from one public buyer to okay. After determining the rating scale 1 to 4, as he said, each rating should be assigned to specific definition. A rating 4 will be severe risk, involving, for example, increase in cost greater than 50. Earlier we said 80. Yes. Severity of risk. Yes. This is for factors. Right, we'll see. All right. After determining the rating 1 to 4, each rating should be assigned specific definition. A rating 4 could be defined as a very severe, involving, for example, increase of cost. Increase in cost greater than increased cost. If it happens, cost will increase. This can be more challenging than defining the likelihood scale, as it involves comparing risk along numerous dimensions, such as budgetary cost, reputational import, budgetary that will impact budget, reputation or quality, all that impact to different dimensions on a single scale. These two criteria enable public entities to measure the criticality of risk design. C equals L into S, right? That is the formula. These measures allow for an evaluation of the relative importance of risk and can be used tool for prioritization. The final criteria is the effectiveness of control measures, a scale which allows the systemic evaluation effort reduce risk. C. It provides a standardized approach to evaluate contract control impact on criticality. After determining the rating scale 1 to 4, the impact of criticality can be assessed to each rating. For example, an effective rating for 4 could be defined as a very effective, and reducing criticality by more than 70% with an effectiveness rating 1 could be defined as marginally with an impact of critically less than 25%. I mean, this is the methodology they are proposing. Setting organizational risk appetite is a key step in establishing an overall approach to risk and can help guide officials in their decision to accept, mitigate, avoid, or transfer risk. Risk appetite should be developed in the context of organizational risk management capability and involve appropriate consultation with stakeholders. Risk appetite may also vary between types of risk and change over time. Risk appetite policies should be reviewed periodically and appropriate adjustment considered. I mean, these all are much reading. Delivery step to apply a risk management process within an organization. Implementing risk management requires establishing the appropriate structure through series of preliminary steps. These preliminary steps include defining overall objectives, establishing uniform and specific risk criteria, organizing risk appetite, establish risk management culture, widespread understanding of risk. Okay, all that is another international organization's definitions. Number 2, we all discussed 3.1. All right. Yeah, preliminary step from prerequisite of successful implement 3.1. This is then risk identification. First step of risk identification is identification of risk that threaten the objective of public activity throughout the cycle. The identification of risk should start as early as possible and be revisited on a regular basis, depending on the capacity of the resources. Risk identification should be undertaken throughout the range of methods, including analysis of historical data, surveys and questionnaires, interviews and focus group, discussions with key stakeholders, research of relevant publication and case studies, and can be supported by the development standard checklist or templates. As discussed above, public procurement activities are subject to different categories of risk. Adverse impact on people, such as women and the planet, are increasingly considered and require proper identification. Sorry for team, but that can't help because this is a very theoretical area. We try to understand the theoretical background, then we'll try what we can learn out of these all. As a summary, we can come to a conclusion, right? The following slide provide factors to consider, so we can identify risk using some factors. It can be used to draw a distinction between risk whose causes and consequences are internal to the contracting authority or procurement system, and risk whose causes and consequences are external, internal and external. What are the consequences? Some are internal, some are external to the contracting authority. For example, risk associated with global commodity prices. Risk associated with global commodity prices. They are outside the control of the procuring organization. Say oil price or Why risk associated with the selecting an inappropriate procurement method? Selecting an inappropriate procurement that are internal that we have done. It can, so that is external and internally. It can also be important distinguish between risk where the probability of risk event, a risk event is known and uncertainty where the probability of the event is unknown. Known and unknown is known and unknown probability. Generating probability information around uncertainty can be an important part of risk identification. Probability information is important part of risk identification and assessment. You can understand it. As a starting point, it can be helpful to consider two fundamental questions. What could happen? How and why could it happen? For instance, for European Commission's public procurement guidance for practitioners recommend using two methods to identify risk. First, conducting a critical analysis of procurement plans. Conducting a critical analysis of procurement plans. In particular, procurement documents and technical specifications. While asking the question, what could go wrong? Right? When you analyze critically the document and specification, we can answer what could go wrong, right? Second, gathering feedback and lesson learned from implementation of previous similar contract. So gathering information, feedback or lesson learned from previous similar contracts, including engagement with other contracting authorities, is the second step. Three specific actors should be considered when identifying gender-related risk. So I don't want to speak up that. You can read. This can be supplemented by 5 ways without applying the risk management process. Yes. 2, underlying the root causes of risk. It consists of iteratively asking the question why until the final controllable cause is uncovered, with the number of iterative depending on the complexity of the risk. For example, failure to carry out appropriate need analysis could be caused by absence of an appropriate methodology, which can be result of a lack of capacity of buying organization, and ultimately gaps in training of procurement professionals with responsibility for need analysis. So they don't know how to do that. That's why they have created a risk. Implementing this method requires working with those direct involved, including appropriate stakeholders and confining analysis of addressable causes. Then identify red flag systems can also be established to indicate when risks should be further investigated, escalated to decision makers. So what are the risks further investigated? Those are called red flags always. Dangerous things. Red flags can include complaints from bidders, the share of contracts below procurement thresholds, unusual bid patterns regarding repeated awards to the same contractor, multiple contract change orders, poor quality goods, works or service, or contracts that are significantly higher or lower than estimated. So if we have that in your organization, you can see those are called red flags. What are the things? Include complaints from bidders, a lot of appeals, for example, unusual bid pattern, repeated award to same contractor, multiple contract change orders, poor quality, price is higher than the significantly contract is significantly higher than the estimated cost, things like that. So those are the ways of identifying the risk, red flags, especially very red or dangerous. Public procurement data and in particular data from e-procurement system can be useful source of information for identify the tracking. So if we have EGP, electronic EGP systems, we can identify red flags, tracking red flags. Because it is easy, everything is database, we can collect that.
So, excuse me.
Yes.
Here red flags that
Yeah.
delays in deliveries is it not a red flag?
Yeah, exactly. It is some of the examples given here. There are many. So delays in delivery, that is also red flags. Exactly. Right? That means either we have not given sufficient delivery period or we have not properly identified the supply chain situation and something like that. Yeah, you are correct. That is con con continuous delays is a red flag. Okay.
Okay,
I
sir.
mean, there are a lot of things are there because this too much of reading, I know, but I am telling this because this is a new area which has not taken even our guidelines into consideration. We have not, I don't see a word in our guideline regarding risk management. Therefore, a new person like your master graduates, you should at least just go through these materials and try to understand some important. But at the end, I know that you get a clear understanding of what is procurement risk management. Don't worry, right? Finally, risk registers are commonly used risk identification tool. They fulfill number of functions, including developing and maintaining a shared understanding of risk between stakeholders, ensuring the tracking and assessment of risk, recording decisions of how risk will be treated, verifying that responsibility for risk have been assigned to the most appropriate risk owner, the providing a holistic view of risk, everything. Using risk register, each risk should be assigned to a single owner. Each risk should be assigned to a single owner. Clarifying accountability, that means assigned to a person, accountable person, while also identify other associated with the risk and the contributing control measures. Risk register often require each risk owner to set out treatment measures. So once they identify the risk, they should identify the mitigating or controlling measures that have been put in place. For example, as you said, delay is a red flag, for example. Uh, who is responsible to identify proper mitigation plans, measures in order to avoid delivery delays or construction delays, right? Maybe engineer or the procurement officer, right? Many risk identification, sorry, To remain their effectiveness, risk register should be updated on set frequency and regularly reviewed. Yes. Many risk identification assessment methodologies are based on qualitative assessment. Qualitative, typically resulting in risk inventories, risk inventory. There is another word. Risk inventory and assessment that capture the impact of likelihood of risk as perceived by procurement and risk management professionals. While these approaches provide critical insight, they may not capture unforeseen risk or may be susceptible to biases and inaccuracies. Okay, still risk identification. Okay. Right. When we come here, we can get some clear understanding. Okay. We'll take a small break because it's too tired for me also. Okay. We'll take a small break and continue this. Actually, what we have done, we have identified the risk, we have to assess the risk, we have to control the risk. Those are the three areas risk mitigation. So these things we identify in the entire procurement process. That is our idea. Okay, with this, we'll stop for a break and come back again. Okay. Again, we are talking about the risk identification. Organizations can strengthen their risk management strategy by using database approaches to competent qualitative methodologies. Data analysis can play an important role in effective risk management, with growing opportunities to incorporate the use of data throughout the risk management cycle. Given the diversity of procurement risk, the broad range of data sources can be useful to the development risk management strategies and to identification and monitoring risk. See table 3 and below, we'll see that later. While public procurement organizations are digitalizing an increasing proportion of their operation throughout the implementation and expectation e-procurement system, effect to fully leverage data from these systems and other sources is often less advanced. With the increased collection of availability of data, countries and contracting authorities are better equipped to conduct insightful evaluation of public procurement risk, yet systemic use of this data remains a challenge. Nevertheless, database approaches to risk management often require specialized skill. Okay. While public procurement, I don't know. There is another one, use artificial intelligence to identify procurement integrity risk in Brazil. An example, we'll just look at the high volume of procurement process and bids can present challenges from monitoring integrity. Challenges in monitoring and integrity risk in Brazil, for example. In Brazil, an average of over 350 procurement notices are published daily, and tenders may only be open for a few days or weeks, making it difficult to conduct risk assessment before contracts are signed. They have a large number of procurement notices are published daily, and tenders may only be open for a few days or weeks, making it difficult to conduct risk assessment. So they can't do that. To address this challenge, Brazil federal courts and the Office of the Comptroller General implement and whoever what they have a tool which uses AI to support continuous auditing. What they have done, AI support to continuous auditing of public procurement process. Okay. The federal blah blah blah, state-owned enterprise and local. Okay. Download the bid document and data and carries out data matching and text analysis to detect misbehavior and okay. So they have used data matching and text analysis. Carries out data matching and text analysis to detect misbehavior and risk tendering documents. So they have used AI techniques such as bid rigging. So bid rigging, restriction on competitiveness, over invoicing on prices and missing information in the, I mean, that is, you can understand. So manually it is not possible. To detect tender regulation, also severe relevant information from the federal, the federal court account. Okay, whatever it is, you just read this. They have used AI technology to detect risk and also some way out to identify risk. Before investing in quantitative data-driven approach to identifying, assessing, and monitoring risk, institution can conduct cost-benefit analysis and consider opportunities to pilot new approach and technique. In this context, the standards such as open contracting data, standards can help to ensure the procurement data collected and published meet global best practices and are fit for purpose to meet the needs of a range of that is open data standard is an international practice, right? Okay, this one I said we can go through this table. Example of potential data sources of public procurement risk identify risk. E-procurement system. E-procurement system can play a critical role in facilitating data collection, management, and analysis, particularly where they cover the full procurement cycle. Right? If we have a full EGP system, we have the data. Many of the data sources listed below are available throughout comprehensive e-procurement system. E-procurement system are key source for range of data critical to addressing public procurement risk. Critical is this range of data critical to address public procurement risk. Principally detailed data, okay. Principally detailed data on public tender processes, example procedure type, product codes, bidding period length, estimated value, award criteria, and contract, example bidder and supply information, contract length, final contract value. So through IT, we can collect this data. From the supply register collect information from firms who wish to participate in tendering process. They generally require potential suppliers to attest to or provide documentation establishing their ability to contract with public buyers. According to the survey on complement OECD recommendation on public procurement, 62% of respondents had supply registries available in some or all of their EGP system. Supply registry often collect information which can be leveraged for risk management and compliance purpose. This can conclude, for example, requirement to declare and maintain information on beneficial ownership. This is another term, very important term. I think I explained that. That is the bidders submit bids and they have the beneficial ownership in other companies as directors or shareholders. That is basically against the that is part of collusion, right? So that is beneficial ownership can be checked through data system, because if you have AI that already can detect such cases. In some cases, this identification and verification must be carried out by authorized person, lawyers, auditors, rather than throughout the self-declaration. So now we say they have the self-declaration, the bidders themselves. But if the Brazil example, they use AI or some other auditing, special auditing for that. Contract performance database and data from ex-post analysis on project cost and benefit. So potential users and risk address, how they have identified it. Contract performance database contain information on suppliers' performance under previously awarded contract, supplier performance. So now we are talking about that vendor performance. Say that is same thing, supplier performance. Why we can't implement the proper blacklisting procedure? We don't have data about the contractor's failures. So one contractor may fail in quality or performance on various issues, and they have stopped construction, and the same contractor can bid for another organization because we can't detect, because we don't have a contractor performance. But we hope to address that in our upcoming contract management guideline to maintain a contract or vendor performance tracking system. So this can include performance evaluation from buyers and information on adherence to cost and timeliness, as well as data on range of administrative and legal outcome, such as terminations to causes or default and subcontractor payment issues. I mean, there are a lot of things. If we have data system, we can detect some risk, right? This database can provide useful inputs for identifying and assessing risk. So if we have a proper database, we can identify and assess risk related to specific procurement phase. The problem is we don't have that type of database. We have very unorganized manual systems. Exclusion list. Exclusion lists are certainly centrally maintained. That exclusion list is like blacklisted. A centrally maintained list for all potential suppliers who are not permitted to tender for public procurement contract, right? So if we have a central database on blacklisted people, that gives a lot of benefit to avoid some risk or identify risk. Because if we don't have such, over and over again, they tender and they bid in other organizations, and again we fail. Suppliers are added to the list based on the number of factors, often including, these factors are important. Number of factors, often including poor performance. Number one, poor performance. Money laundering is also they have, and corruption and non-payment of this. And also there's other things also. We can say quality failures, delays, non-performance. Performance is covered. What else? Litigation issues, they frequently, etc. So I mean, we don't have information related to contractors' performance generally, right? Therefore, the inherent risk is always there. Data from exclusion list can be used together with information from supplier registries and other data sets to identify potential high-risk tenders or patterns across industries and product categories. I mean, I gave this just to get some, insight on this. Asset and interest declaration. Many countries have asset and interest declaration process requiring public officials to document outside the activity. We also have that asset and liability declaration, outside activities, employment, investment, assets, and gift benefit. So that is part of the bribery and corruption. Databases of asset declaration and conflict of interest declaration. We also have conflict of interest in addition to asset. Can be used by contracting authorities to mitigate corruption and integrity risk. Yeah, that is a good thing. mitigate corruption and integrity risk. We can't eradicate, but maybe that is a measure. The guideline has not the guideline. The asset declaration is coming from another act, but integrity risk is we say the interest declaration of integrity by committee members and all. By highlighting cases of misconduct as well as use more broadly in conjunction with the inclusion list of so whatever it is, these basically cover the if we have a proper blacklisting procedure based on central database, that is a good way out for mitigation. Unit price database. That is I mean, this information is important when we see the country procurement system, our country procurement system, whether we are aligned with the international best practice. Unit price database. You see that a unit price or cost database complies cost data at the line item or unit level and provides a standard reference for developing cost estimate. So we don't have that also. We have some for construction. We have what do you call this? BSR, no? Building. This some rates are there, no? CEDA rates and various rates are there. But we don't have a proper island-wide database for preparation of cost estimate. Unit price database can be used. We don't have a database as such. We have some standard rates or something. Can be used to support the development of accurate cost estimate, reducing the risk. If we develop accurate cost estimate, that reduce the risk of tenders. If we our budget cost, our estimate frequently exceed. One thing is the pollution and bid rigging. The other thing is inaccurate cost estimation or errors in the option appraise process. More generally, they can inform procurement strategy development, helping to reduce the risk of suboptimal packaging and decisions on the nature of the contractual relation. They can, okay, they can also be used in evaluation process, helping to determine whether procurement process have been successful in managing cost. Administrative register and database. Administrative registry and database, unit price and cost database. Just identify, you need not to worry much, but identify some tools and strategies while used across other countries. Administrative register is another thing. And database can include tax records as well as data from criminals, civil and administrative proceedings, domestic and international. These data sources can be used to determine suppliers' tax compliance. We don't have that also. They avoid tax, even suppliers, as well as identify potential high-risk tenders or patterns across industries and product categories. If we had that type of administrative register, so that will be very helpful to detect the tax burden of suppliers, contractors, and service providers and consultants, right? So we also can think of that. Pollutant release and transfer register. You see, pollutant release and transfer register. Those are very important things. Is publicly accessible database or inventory of chemicals or pollutants released to air, water and soil and transferred off-site for treatment. They bring to the information together information about which chemicals are being released, where, how much, and who. See that is very important. All OECD countries have established active national PRTR, this one, pollution, the pollutant, things like that. For further details, okay.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Regarding that administrative register, you
yes,
told that there should be a method to check whether suppliers are paying their tax properly, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
why we can't get a report from them at the bidding stage? Uh,
Uh,
Obtained from that tax Inland Revenue Department.
I don't think they also have a central database. I don't think, but here that should come from procurement. For example, if we have a central database with EGP supported, then according to our guidelines also we say when we award the contract, the name of the contractor, contract value, and everything should be recorded in the website or internet or whatever the website. And also if it's high value, that should be gazetted, right? That is there. But this point is important. I strike to my mind if we have that is essentially EGP, otherwise it's not possible. Is if automated administrative register is there, all the contracts, small or big, local and international, everything recorded in the system, then the Inland Revenue can link. They can trace for their tax purpose. Rather than we get from the Inland Revenue, we can provide that information to Inland Revenue.
No, no, sir. We can't get it. We can request the bidder to submit within with that bid proposal.
Okay,
Because we are requesting some documents from him, that bank guarantee and likewise.
okay. Supposing bidder submit no tax liability, right? But we can do that. Can we say that no, you must pay tax and submit the proper report? No, he said no. I have no. I mean, Inland Revenue has no record about that. For example, if he doesn't pay tax, there is no record, no? Something like that. So, for example, now everybody should register under TIN, tax identification number. But still people are not registered. If we ask the TIN registered people, many people are not registered yet. I think that is should be other way around. We should be able to provide a database because we are awarding contract, we are making payments, and we should have an information system that should link to the tax department to charge tax, right? If we have a proper system, if we all catch these taxable people into their net, then your thing is okay. Then we can get reliable information from tax department also whether they have paid tax or not. But at the moment, I don't think we have information even in the tax department. Only those who pay tax, they can report us. Otherwise, there is no record. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Then supply data is yes, a number of important things are here. Is broad category of information which may be sourced from employees' payroll system, mandatory or voluntary self-assessment statements and declarations, compliance report on sustainability and supply chain due diligence, and public filing and financial reporting. If accessible, this information may be used to evaluate and monitor suppliers' risk. Example, financial and supply chain risk, as well as to verify information and declaration provided by supplier. Supply is broad category of information which may source from employee payroll system. Okay, something like that. I don't know. This actually I download from OECD because I thought.
No, it's now happening, sir. Now, some procurement, yeah, it's now happening. In some tenders, they are requested the employee should in their payroll systems. Otherwise, no support and maintenance contracts. What they do, they hire people from outside and they do the contract. So there'll be issues.
Correct.
So it's there, sir, now.
So we ask how many employees are in your payroll, no?
It will ask like system engineers, for example, system engineers and network engineers, how many, and they should in the payroll system.
Okay, that's correct. Yeah, because we request, then they must give, payroll systems information. Others are outside consultant, no?
Correct, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, whatever it is, what I want to draw your attention here, examples of potential data sources, right? Therefore, public procurement risk identification. So this is not in our country because we are learning, this subject is new to us. Actually, this is completely new. I said there is not a single word I can search from our guideline or manual regarding the risk management. So we completely ignore. Maybe in the future we have to think of that and broaden our knowledge about the risk identification and mitigation, etc. At the moment, we have some not methodical way. We have identified risks and mitigate risks and control risks, etc. These international practices may help us to think some more productive way to address this issue. Okay. Now, identification finished. Then we have to assess the risk. Various ways we can identify risk. Result. Broader literature. I don't like this, read out this type of thing, but I was under the impression that these students, your participants, should undergo this because this is a new area. Everybody, even us, it is new because we are not practicing in risk management. So, for academic point of view, it's important. A risk assessment is the second step. The risk management process is assessing risk by evaluating likelihood and severity. Earlier, we mentioned about that. How we assess what is the probability of occurrence or probability of happening, and what is the degree of severity of the identified risk. The assessment process asks the following questions. What is the likelihood of risk will occur? Depending on the risk, this likelihood may be defined as measurable, qualitative or quantitatively. And expressed mathematically or descriptively. Right? Some are not mathematical, not qualitative, quantitative. If the risk occurs, how severe the degree of severity will be consequences be. Similarly, the severity of the risk can be expressed qualitatively or quantitatively. Again, very high risk is a qualitative one. If you give a number or percentage, mathematical. How do existing control measures affect the likelihood and the... So what is the existing control mechanism? Mitigating measures. These questions can be answered internal knowledge and experience, external resources such as audit reports, by consulting qualified and experienced outside experts, in determining both likelihood and severity assessments should account for existing risk management measures and distinguish between inherent and net risk. Again, we define what is inherent risk and what is net risk. Where possible, effort should be made to qualify the likelihood and severity in order to facilitate prioritization and inform definitions around risk control measures. The following provides an example of a tool for systematically assessing the likelihood and severity of risk in innovation procurement. Yes. Together, the likelihood and severity L and S above enable an overall risk estimate or critically designated as C above and defined as the product of the likelihood and severity. As we mentioned earlier, C equal L into S. That is the risk estimate, right? For example, if the likelihood is 4 and the severity is 3, then the overall criticality is 12. See the diagram below, we'll see that later. A risk matrix is a tool for classifying and visualizing risk based on their likelihood and severity. It supports strategic and operational decision making by allowing for the measurement of the criticality of risk and providing a benchmark for comparison between risk and evolution of risk over time. Risk metrics are dynamic tools that require regular reviewing and updating after the risk metrics we mentioned earlier also. A dynamic tool that require regular review and updating after the evaluation of efficiency and efficacy of risk management measures that are currently in place or under consideration. A transition risk management tool for innovation procurement. Risk evasion is another word, is the key barrier to adoption of strategic procurement by contracting authorities. This is particularly true for innovation procurement, where the development and adoption of new technologies poses risk beyond the procurement procedure itself. To encourage the use of strategic procurement in project co-financed by various finance institutions, pilot project to offer practical support to contracting authorities in member state in strategic. Okay. For one of the pilot of OECD developed a tool to assess opportunities and risks in the transition from pre-commercial procurement to procurement of innovation. That is their term, don't worry. The goal was to provide structured approach to decision making on transitioning from innovative solution procured by a PCP to large-scale implementing using PPI process. The tool applies a risk lens which allow for assessment of blah, blah, blah. At the same time, it highlights those areas in which organization can benefit from endorsing. Okay, that is not important. This one, this is very important. Huh? Please note again. Because we are example of risk heat map or matrix heat matrix. Very high, high, moderate, and low. What is very high means? Probability of 75 to 100 will occur more than 20 times if it is quantitatively or percentage number of 20. High risk probability 51 to 75, less than 75, will occur more than 20 times per year, maybe same, that all are high and very high. Moderate probability 26 to 50, 4 to 10 times per year. That will happen 4 to 10 times a year. Or in other words, 26 to 50%. Low probability of up to 25% occur 0 to 3 times per year. That's how they identify the likelihood and scale. You see, okay, now this is the matrix. So they have put 1, 2, 3, 4 this way, horizontal, 1, 2, 3, 4, vertical. Okay. For example, very high. Budget exceed by 50%. Unacceptable performance failures. Key milestone delayed more than 6 weeks. Right? Very high. Okay. This is the number 4. Three into 4. Yeah, that's how they have calculated. This is the likelihood. This is the impact, right? Okay. How the 16 comes? L4 and what is this other one? A formula. This one. This one. L and S, no? Okay. Severity this way. C. No. S. L into S, no? Right. So 4 into 4, 16. 4 into 3, this one. I. Budget exceed by 25%. Performance failure in area of critical importance. Key milestone delay 3 to 6 weeks. So these 3. What is 3? Impact is 3 here. And exceed by 20%. Performance failure, critical 6 weeks. No, that is 4. 6 weeks by 6 weeks. Budget exceed by 10%. Moderate performance failure area minor. Key milestone delayed 3 weeks. That comes under moderate. So that's how they have this into this. That's how they have calculated. 4 into 4. This is 4 into 3. This is 3 into 4. Here 1 into 1. These yellow things are very low. Green things are moderate. Orange things, 2, 3 things are high. Red things are very high. So you just think of that impact scale examples they have given. Impact is this. Okay. Now there's another thing. How to treat that for mitigation of risk. Risk assessment, risk identification, risk assessment, and mitigation or treatment, evaluation and treatment. Risk evaluation and treatment is third main step in the risk management cycle. The appropriate treatment measure will depend on the result of risk assessment, the public entity risk appetite, and the cost of treatment options. Risk appetite, we define that, how much we can undertake. The result of risk assessment should be used to support decision making for the most appropriate treatment option for each risk depending on the risk appetite. Risk appetite. Organization in relation to public procurement objective. Effective risk management requires balancing the cost of different treatment strategies, the acceptability of residual risk, and the benefit of action of generating risk. Acceptability of residual risk. Broadly, organizations face 4 options or paths for any risk, accepting the risk. This may be appropriate when the inherent or net risk is of suitable low likelihood, or severity when the cost of the expected outcome is relatively low. Cost is also low. Then no harm of accepting that type of risk. Likelihood is low and cost implication is low. Or when the cost of mitigating risk is high, on the other hand, if you are trying to mitigate, is high. In such a situation, we can accept the risk. That is when in the nature of inherent risk. Even when deciding to accept the risk, it may still be necessary to develop plans to monitor the risk and respond it is realized. For example, when undertaking an innovation procurement, there is an essential risk that an appropriate or viable solution may not be developed. It's a risk, right? So innovative things we expect, but the viable solution may not be developed. There's a risk always. Transferring some or all of the risk to another party. Risk transfer rather than accepting. For example, risk can be transferred through the purchase of insurance or the inclusion of indemnification clauses. Indemnification clause. Indemnification clause, because we have that clause. In contrast, box 3.5 expand on the risk transfer decision for public buyers. So we transfer the risk of construction due to unforeseen risk by asking them to submit insurance policy, right? Because that is an indemnification clause or insurance clause. If you try to mitigate, that is very costly, because that complete the project is wash out due to flood, for example, if it is not there. Third one, mitigating or controlling the risk by reducing the likelihood and severity throughout a variety of treatment. For example, a public entity may mitigate the risk that specifically may not meet user need by putting in place formal pressure to involve users in the development of technical specifications. So there's always the risk. What we prepare not necessarily meet the user's needs, maybe, or public needs. Then we get involved the users also when preparing specific. For example, it's a common blame the fertilizer we purchase is not the one they need, the farmers say. So the best way to avoid that risk is to get involved the farmers when they develop the specification, for example. Risk control involves devoting additional resources to reduce the criticality of risk. And public entities should ensure that they are efficiently allocating resources such as the cost of reducing risk, likelihood, and severity are balanced against the benefit. See Annex 1, for example, we'll see. Another one is avoiding the risk. Completely avoid entirely by changing the procurement plan or abandoning the project. For example, a procurement might be cancelled if market analysis found that there were no or very few potential bidders who could meet the requirement. So rather than conducting, we avoid completely. So there are 4 ways to risk evaluation and treatment: accept the risk, transfer the risk, mitigate or controlling risk, or avoid the risk. Risk evaluation and treatment: deciding when to transfer risk. As you can just read this one. This is an example. This decision chart is here. Number 1, identify and assessment of the risk. If we can risk, identify, acceptable risk, yes, and we have to monitor risk. Answer is no. Risk evaluation and prediction. Yes. Identification and assessment of net risk. What is the acceptable risk? Yes. So monitor the risk. Answer is no. Risk control or possible transfer. If you can transfer, yes. Transfer risk or control risk. Two options. Right? Risk control and transfer not possible, avoid risk. Something like that. The following chart provides a sample decision tree for this purpose, which can also be supported and informed by risk matrix. I mean, earlier slides will support for this one, whether we can transfer, whether we can assess, accept, yes or no. Sometimes transfer, yes or no. We can do various actions. Again, for higher risk, more complex, or strategically important procurement, the European Commission Public Procurement Guidance or practitioners propose establishing a gateways. That is their practice throughout the procurement process. Gateways aim to ensure that the procurement is well planned and that all relevant parties are involved. That is the gateway, they say. The use of public procurement gateways were developed through lessons learned. Earlier we mentioned that gateways are developed through lesson learned. Then the occurrence of possibility of occurring risk is minimal. Exercise in public contract that had gone wrong, resulting in major cost and time overruns or failure to deliver expected stuff. So based on their experience, they identify the reasons and avoid that. These gateways are kept points in development of procurement where a review can take place before important decisions are taken. Right? The following table provides an example of potential gateways of key points in the development of a procurement at which risk review could be undertaken. Available treatment option will depend on the risk being managed. In all cases, interventions and control measures should be evaluated based on their impact. Okay, this is all our international things. We don't have anything. Example procurement gate. Say, Gateway 0, completion of procurement planning. Take place in the early planning to ensure that there are realistic, coherent and achievable milestones of the procurement and contract implementation. Completion of procurement planning is 0, Gateway 0. 1. Contract scope. take place on basis of the draft procurement documents before any advertising or publication of information. Gateway 3, shortlisting or pre-qualification something. I think that shortlisting word is not good. Pre-qualification. Shortlisting we use for consultants, take place following the evaluation of the selected criteria. Gateway 3, tender evaluation or bid evaluation take place when the preferred tenderer has been selected, but before contract award or before proceedings to final tendering in the case of two-stage procedure. For contract, take place before signing of the contract. 5, interim and final delivery take place regularly during contract implementation at each stage. So what is this gateway? So they have some data information to each and every cases. So risk after treatment, the final step is risk monitoring, right? Risk monitoring. In the risk management cycle is monitoring. Risk monitoring should take place throughout the procurement process and consist of ongoing tracking as well as more structured reviews on a regular schedule basis. This keep step aim at identify new risks. What are the new risks? Tracking the criticality of risk within an evolving internal and external context. Evolving because of evolving internal and external context that criticality can track. Tracking the criticality of risk after the implementation of control measures and helping prioritize any residual risk. Even though still the risk is remaining residuals. Providing assurance to internal and external stakeholders that risks are being monitored. Assurance. We provide an assurance. Internal and external stakeholders that risks are being monitored. So this is the risk monitoring. Still, risk register are key tool to monitor individual risks and provide an overall review of the full suite of risk. Similar to the identification step, the use of appropriate data plays a key role to adequately monitor risk. Data analysis can also play a key role in effective risk monitoring. OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure advise that adherence use digital technologies and data analytics to understand performance, inform decision making, and respond to identify risks and adapt control activities, while also acknowledging the need for systems that ensure systemic collection, storage, and management. Technologies such as artificial intelligence system can be used to cross-reference and reconcile terabytes of data from multiple sources to create alert for non-compliance. By converting previously manual process, speed and effective can be greatly increased. That is, they can say using AI, they can. So communicating risk is also part of that. Communication risk is critical to successful risk management, and organizations should put in place processes to supply, share, and obtain risk information. Share risk information in iterative and continuous way. Communication should reflect stakeholders' expectations and needs, be carried out in timely and regular fashion throughout the risk management process, and ensure that relevant information is collected. Okay. The greatest procurement risks, particularly those that exceed the organized risk appetite, should be brought to the attention of relevant stakeholders. There should be structured communication. Okay. Adequate risk communication should strive to be complete, concise, accurate, and credible. Okay, I don't read everything. All related to communication. A scalable framework for risk management. The section developed typology of procurement risk through the procurement process at the project level. The first subsection examines risk at each stage of the procurement cycle for common, non-complex goods and services, which generally includes off-the-shelf goods and services which are already wide available on the market. The second subsection examines more complex procurement. Okay, we'll see what they have done. The procurement of common non-complex off-shelf goods and services is subject to risk through the procurement cycle. The following table provides an overview of the procurement cycle of common off-the-shelf goods. Okay. Along with the key risk at each stage. These key risks may have a range of root causes, and additional analysis may be required to determine those causes. Okay. For example, failing to adequately identify or understand needs. Failing to identify the needs is a key risk in the needs analysis stage of the procurement process, but may be caused by factors such as short timelines, or lack of capacity of the officers. In the case of common non-complex goods and service, all the phases addressed below will typically be responsibility and under the control of the procurement. The same is not the case for procurement of complex of the sale good. Complex of sale goods and bespoke goods and services, which will be treated further below. Okay, this table is important. Okay, this is also very important, I am telling you. There are all tender pre-tendering, tendering, tendering and post-tendering. In our word, procurement planning and preparatory stage, contract stage, and post-contract stage. Okay, we'll see what they can say. Pre-tendering space, that means before advertise. Stage, key risk. Need analysis, identification of needs, including engagement with stakeholders. What is the risk? Needs are not adequately or comprehensively identified or understood. Right? That may be the risk. Right? Even though we do a need analysis, but needs are not adequately, comprehensively identified by the officers. Market analysis and engagement. Assessment, the market ability to respond to the procurement and preparing the market to respond to. Market to respond. Right? So they have to do a market analysis once we have identified the needs. The procurement strategy is badly informed and the market is unprepared to respond. Right? So that is the risk. Drafting technical specification, option appraisal, analysis and selection of potential solutions. The wrong solution is selected or it does not fully addresses the identified needs. That is the risk. Make or buy decision, I said that can be taken. Choosing which aspect of the delivery to manage or product within the procuring organization and which to buy. Capabilities are incorrectly assessed and responsibilities inefficiently distributed, right? Capabilities are incorrectly assessed, right, for their make or buy decision, and responsibility insufficiently distributed. So that will be a risk in the planning and or preparatory stage of pre-tender. Here, another one, packaging decisions, contract scoping decision. Here, yeah, still, yeah. Packaging decisions, contract scoping decision to guide the procurement into multiple lots. Should not be bold anyway. Lots are created in a way that reduces competition or introduces inefficiencies. So we develop lots or packages, but it harm or jeopardize the competition or inefficiencies created. Another one, contractual relationship, contract design, choosing how to structure the contractual relationship between the buyer and the supplier. Risks are inefficiently allocated or incentive structure is misaligned. Bidder selection process, choosing in procurement process available in the procurement legislation. Risk that most efficient bidder will not be selected. Okay. Request for proposal or request for bid and tender submission. The process of issuing a request for tender and receiving bids from potential suppliers, lack of transparency, unequal treatment and competition failures may be the risk. Tendering phase, bid evaluation and award. The process of evaluating and selecting tenders, the best value tender is not selected. Under contract management, the contract is not implemented as written. Examples, supply charges for goods and service not delivered. Supply charges for goods and service are not delivered. Okay. Okay. So this is some example of procurement risk and the stages. Each stage identify. I think this will help you to understand some more regarding the risk. So this you can just read out for your understanding. All the stages we have mentioned: need analysis, okay, market analysis, drafting technical specification, make or buy decisions, or more details here, packaging decisions, pre-tendering phase, command of the sale, nature of contractual relationship, risk allocation. Okay, all the additional things. 16 pre-tendering phase of command. Okay. Tendering phase, request for tender and tender submission. Risks in this phase generally threaten equal treatment, free access, and non-discrimination of potential bidders, and that is tender phase. This can include failure to widely publicize invitation. Widely publicized public invitation. Limiting participation or non-disclosure of information such as evaluation and award criteria. For example, that's very good. Non-disclosure of evaluate and award criteria leading to weak proposals. Failure to make potential bidders aware of contracting opportunities impact transparency, equal treatment, and competition, increasing the risk that procurement will not deliver value for money. Not deliver value for money. That is a risk. Failure to make potential bidders aware of contracting opportunity impact transparency, equal treatment, and competition. Okay, various things. Unclear technical and administrative process to procurement opportunities can also limit the number of complaints. Limit the compliant bids. That means they have to reject, reducing competition and value for money. This can be exacerbated in the case of strategic procurement if bidders are unable to comply with the more stringent criteria set out by the. This situation may impact the procurement process, causing, for instance, delays due to changes in tender implementation. So that is also a possible consequence. Bid evaluation and award risk in the evaluation and award stage include lack of transparency and bid opening procedure, breaches of confidentiality, the acceptance of non-compliant bids, and unreasonable disqualification, resulting in reduced competition. Factors are inadequate technical expertise is another common thing among evaluators. Can also increase the risk of errors and threaten the successful selection of best tenders as an conflict of interest or corruption. Finally, there are risks related to awarding contract to bidders who cannot deliver. Their proposals are not economically viable. They are not compliant with basic legal requirements. The lack of necessary finance, that is a common mistake. We select an unsuitable people. Okay, the contract management also we have given a lot of points. You can see. Again, now we have say complex goods. So you can go through this table, right? Right. This is also a good example for you to study purpose. Risk category. What is the risk category? Example of contract measures. Limited or lack of an adequate need analysis. What is the risk category? Operational. Example of control measures. Various measures given. Capacity building on need analysis. Involving end user in the definition and validation of need through surveys, meeting, questionnaire. Preparation and publication of annual procurement plan that includes information such as budget. So that is a good thing. How to mitigate, control the risk These are the actions. This is very important. Please keep in mind. Lack of limited or lack of adequate market analysis. The risk category is sustainability. What are the mitigating risks? Capacity building activities on market analysis, develop and use standardized process and template for market analysis. All coming under pre-tendering. Unequal treatment of economic operator. Economic operator can a bidder, bidders. Different countries use different words. The risk categories, regulatory compliance. What is this? This unequal treatment. Ensure that relevant information is shared with economic operators and key records of meeting with potential bidders. Keep records. That means they are pre-bid meeting or whatever. Widely disseminate information about upcoming tenders and opportunities to participate market consultation through prior information notice. That is not prior information, that is called GPN, we say. General Procurement Notice or Advanced Procurement Notice, APN, entity website. So, I mean, this is also important for you to study this table and see under different stages and how we can mitigate. This is very important for you to study. Actually, I am telling you these tables and this table and complex goods and this one common goods, right? You can understand what are the stages of stage and what are the key risks. And here we say it's mitigating measures, right? Then you know the risk cycle, risk identification, risk assessment, and risk mitigating and monitoring. Those are the things we can end up with this discussion. If we are ready to study a little harder, you can come to some sort of conclusion about the procurement risk management. Don't worry too much of details I have given in the previous slides. But some are repetitive, some are more elaborate. But then that table is also important, right? Which table? This one. I said identify that how we can map the risk, right? With this, I don't want to talk much. Now it is too much, I think, today anyway. Post trending also. I think you can just study as at least for your academic interest how we can identify risk and incorporate it into our system, procurement system. With this, I can stop, but you can ask any further questions. Shall we wind up then?
Yes, thank you very
Okay,
much
sir.
for speaking
Thank
us
you. I
over
think.
6 hours.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Good
Good night,
night.
sir.
Good
Good
night,
night.
everybody. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, sir.
Good night, everybody.